Yesterday, we got through the last little section of part 3, where after Dupin goes to the scene of the crime and he claims to have solved the crime completely, he then takes our nameless narrator back to their house. Dupin and narrator go back home and they get pistols out. The narrator is kind of freaked out. Dupin claims the guy who might not have killed the ladies, who's definitely there, may be coming back to the house soon. So, he then explains how he solved the crime, and we left off yesterday right here with the sound of someone walking up the steps, who we think would be the sailor in question. So, it starts off. At this moment, we heard a step upon the stairs. Be ready, said Dupin, with your pistols, but neither use them nor show them until a signal from myself. The front door of the house had been left open, and the visitor had entered without ringing. That's kind of rude, entering the house without ringing the bell. And advanced several steps upon the staircase. So he walks up the stairs a little bit. Now, however, he seemed to hesitate. Presently, we heard a descending. So he took a few steps up and went, I don't like this. And he walks a couple more steps down again. Dupin was moving quickly to the door when we again heard him coming up. He did not turn back a second time, but stepped up with decision. There we go, finally. So he finally came up with decision and rapped at the door of our chamber. Come in, said Dupin in a cheerful and hearty tone. A man entered. I love technology. A man entered. He was a sailor, evidently, a tall, stout, and muscular-looking person, with a certain daredevil expression of countenance. Not altogether unprepossessing, his face, greatly sunburnt, was more than half hidden by whisker and mustachio. He had with him a huge oaken cudgel. A cudgel is like a length of wood. A lot of times they're wrapped in metal bands or something like that. It's what sailors would usually have, so they could hit people with. But appeared to be, or even guards and things like that would have cudgels. But appeared to be otherwise unarmed. He bowed awkwardly and bade us good evening in French accents, which, altogether somewhat Newfoundlandish, were still sufficiently indicative of the Parisian origin. Neufchatelish. That's a strange word. It's kind of saying that he sounds like he's from like the northern part of France. He still has a French accent, but it does sound like there's a little bit of, and he's from somewhere slightly different. Sit down, my friend, said Dupin. I suppose you have called about the orangutan. Upon my word, I almost envy you the possession of him. A remarkably fine and no doubt a very valuable animal. How old do you suppose him to be? So Dupin acts like this is nothing, like they're good old buddies, they're friends here. The sailor drew a long breath with the air of a man relieved of some intolerable burden, and then replied in an assured tone. Remember, we have Dupin before this explaining what this guy is thinking. And he's thinking that, the people who caught my orangutan cannot know that he also murdered people the whole town over, essentially. No way he can know that. So he was holding that idea. But Dupin makes him really comfortable. He goes, oh, thank goodness, they don't know. I have no way of telling, but he can't be more than 4 or 5 years old. Have you got him here? Oh, no. We had no conveniences for keeping him here. He is at a livery stable at the Rue du Morgue, just by. You can get him in the evening. Of course, you are prepared to identify the property. Remember, he is trying to find his orangutan, and he followed him to the scene of crime, but could not catch him while he was there. To be sure, I am sure, sir. I shall be sorry to part with him, said Dupin. I don't mean that you should be at all this trouble for nothing, sir, said the man. Couldn't expect it. I am very willing to pay a reward for the finding of the animal. That is to say, anything in reason. Well, replied my friend, Dupin, that is all very fair, to be sure. Let me think. What should I have? Oh, I will tell you. My reward shall be this. You shall give me all the information in your power about these murders in the Rue Morgue. So, he lulled him into the sense of, oh, I'm fine. He doesn't know anything about how this orangutan murdered these people. And then shocks him out of nowhere after he's lulled him to a sense of comfort. Dupin said the last words in a very low tone and very quietly. Just as quietly, too, he walked toward the door, locked it, and put the key in his pocket. He then drew a pistol from his bosom, from his chest pocket, and placed it, without the least flurry, upon the table. So without even hurrying, he's very sure of himself. He just takes it out and puts it right there in front of him. The sailor's face flushed up as if he were struggling with suffocation. He started to his feet and grasped his cudgel, but the next moment he fell back into his seat, trembling violently, and with the countenance of death itself. He spoke not a word. I pitied him from the bottom of my heart. My friend, said Dupin in a kind tone, you are alarming yourself unnecessarily. You are indeed. We mean you no harm whatever. I pledge you the honor of a gentleman and of a Frenchman that we intend you no injury. I perfectly well know that you are innocent of the atrocities in the Rue Morgue. It will not do, however, to deny that you are in some measure implicated in them. You are in some way, you're closely tied to this, of course. From what I have already said, you must know that I have had means of information about this matter, means of which you could never have dreamed. Now the thing stands thus. You have done nothing which you could have avoided, nothing certainly which renders you culpable, or you are a perpetrator of this, culpable. You are also guilty. You are not even guilty of robbery, when you might have robbed with impunity, with no one stopping you. You have nothing to conceal. You have no reason for concealment. On the other hand, you are bound by every principle of honor to confess all you know. An innocent man is now imprisoned, charged with that crime of which you can point out the perpetrator. The sailor had recovered his presence of mind in a great measure, while Dupin uttered these words. But his original boldness of bearing was all gone. So he came in, he seemed really kind of sure of himself, maybe just a little bit nervous. But now, he's just kind of a broken guy. He's lost all of that sureness, the original boldness that he had. Oh, so help me, said he after a brief pause. I will tell you all I know about this affair, but I do not expect you to believe what half I say. I would be a fool indeed if I did. Still, I am innocent, and I will make it clean breast if I die for it. When he started this, what he stated was in substance this. So we're going to get a condensed version of what he said. I mean, I'm sure he probably sat there and told a whole story. We're going to get a brief little tiny blurb, a summary. We're going to get a summary here. What he stated was in substance this. He had lately made a voyage to the Indian archipelago. A party, of which he formed one, landed at Borneo and passed into the interior on an excursion of pleasure. So, they were traveling through India, the Indian archipelago, and close to India, and they got a party together and they went on land. For pleasure, just to go and explore. Himself and a companion had captured the orangutan. This companion dying, the animal fell into his own exclusive possession. After great trouble, occasioned by the intractable ferocity of his captive during the home voyage, he at length succeeded in lodging it safely at his own residence in Paris. All right? So even though he knew this creature was savage, it was ferocious, and after being caught, he still was able to succeeded in lodging it safely in his own residence in Paris, where, not to attract toward himself the unpleasant curiosity of his neighbors, he kept it carefully secluded until such time as it should recover from a wound in the foot it received from a splinter on board ship. So, apparently what made this orangutan so angry, a lot of it, so it should recover from a wound in the foot received from a splinter on board the ship. Now, in case this has never happened to you before, Is this a source of anger? Question mark. Especially animals, if they are hurt and you try to take care of them, a lot of times they'll lash out at you. My dog, while people are terrified that she's a pit bull, she is the sweetest thing ever. But whenever she cut her nail down the middle on a piece of, surprisingly, carpet, cut her nail and split her nail in half, while my wife and I held her paw down and held her down, even then, after holding her down and she's such a gentle soul, she still would snap at us a little bit because she's in pain. And pain for animals, they don't understand it, so they just lash out. So maybe this could be the source of this orangutan's anger. Heck, usually in the zoo, they seem so calm. His ultimate design was to sell it. So, the sailor wanted to sell this orangutan for a lot of money. Returning home from some sailor's frolic on the night, or rather in the morning of the murder, he found the beast occupying his own bedroom, into which it had broken from a closet adjoining, where it had been, as was thought, securely confined. Razor in hand, and fully lathered, it was sitting before a looking glass, attempting the operation of shaving, in which it had no doubt previously watched its master through the keyhole of the closet. So monkeys will do this thing where they will copy what they see a lot of times. If you're a human and you're around a monkey, they'll copy you sometimes. So, this beast, this orangutan, broke out of the closet it was locked up in, grabbed a razor, and it had seen the master here, the sailor, use the razor to shave. So he was trying to do the same thing. A monkey was. Not really a good idea for the monkey. And as it says, it was fully lathered. So either this could be meaning two things, and I'm pretty sure since we're talking about shaving, it means that it had wiped all the shaving cream on itself. Or it could be lathered as in it's really fully enraged. Maybe it had already cut himself. Terrified at the sight of so dangerous a weapon in the possession of an animal so ferocious and so well able to use it, the man for some moments was at a loss what to do. He had been accustomed, however, to quiet the creature, even in its fiercest moods, by the use of a whip, and to this he now resorted. Upon sight of it, the orangutan sprang at once through the door of the chamber, down the stairs, and thence through a window, unfortunately open, into the street. So, to calm the orangutan down, to make it terrified so it'll go away, it'll calm down in the corner, he would use a whip to whip it. Not really such a good idea, because obviously the orangutan does not want to get whipped, so it runs away. It breaks past him, runs up the door, goes downstairs, and jumps out of a window onto the street. The Frenchman followed in despair, the ape, razor still in hand, occasionally stopping to look back and gesticulate at its pursuer. So the monkey would look back at the sailor chasing him and wave his arms at him. Gesticulate, move your arms. A lot of teachers move their arms in certain ways. Until the latter had nearly come up with it. It then again made off. In this manner, the chase continued for a long time. No one was impressed by that. I don't see why. That was impressive. The streets were profoundly quiet, as it was nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. In passing down an alley in the rear of the Rue Morgue, the fugitive's attention was arrested by a light gleaming from the open window of Madame L'Espagne's chamber. So now we get how the monkey got into the Madame L'Espagne's chamber here. It was its attention, the fugitive monkey, attention was arrested by the light gleaming in the open window of her chamber. Remember this, as I said right here, this is late at night. The sailor had been chasing this monkey for a long time. Rushing to the building, it perceived the lightning rod, clambered up with inconceivable agility, grasped the shutter, which was thrown fully back against the wall, and by its means swung itself directly upon the headboard of the bed. So, it swung in through the window from the shutters. The whole feat did not occupy a minute. The shutter was kicked open again by the orangutan as it entered the room. So as it jumped into the room, its foot kicked out and hit the shutter again so that the sailor could go do this basically the same thing and jump in as well, following it. The sailor, in the meantime, was both rejoiced and perplexed. He had strong hopes of now recapturing the brute, as it could scarcely escape from the trap into which it had ventured. It's now locked into a room, except by the rod where it might be intercepted as it came down. On the other hand, there was much cause for anxiety as to what it might do in the house. This latter reflection urged the man still to follow the fugitive. A lightning rod is ascended without difficulty. Remember, this guy's a sailor, so he's used to climbing up ropes all day long, especially by a sailor. But when he had arrived as high as the window, which lay far to his left, his career was stopped. The most that he could accomplish was to reach over so as to obtain a glimpse of the interior of the room. At this glimpse, he nearly fell from his hold through excess of horror. Now it was that those hideous shrieks arose upon the night, which had startled from the slumber the inmates of the Rue Morgue. So, when this monkey jumped in there, it scared the living daylights out of the two women, the mom and the daughter, and so they started shrieking. Madame L'Espanaye and her daughter, habited in their night clothes, had apparently been arranging some papers in the iron chest already mentioned, which had been wheeled into the middle of the room. It was open, and its contents lay beside it on the floor. So, the reason why it looked like the safe had been rifled through is because it was open. We see it was open because they were putting stuff inside of it. The victims must have been sitting with their backs toward the window, and from the time elapsing between the entrance of the beast and the screams, it seems probable that it was not immediately perceived. So, this monkey jumped in through the window while their backs were turned, and they didn't notice it at first. The flapping, too, of the shutter would naturally have been attributed to the wind. As the sailor looked in, the gigantic animal had seized Madame L'Espanaye by the hair, which was loose as she had been combing it, and was flourishing the razor about her face in imitation of the motions of a barber. Remember, this monkey, the only thing he knows about the razor is you're supposed to scrape it against your face. So, a monkey moving his giant arms around is waving this thing around her face, and that's not going to be great. The daughter lay prostrate, and motionless. She had swooned. She passed out at the sight of this monkey. The screams and struggles of the old lady, during which the hair was torn from her head, had the effect of changing the probably pacific purposes of the orangutan into those of wrath. Pacific means calm. That's why the Pacific Ocean is called the Pacific Ocean, because when the explorers first sailed on the Pacific Ocean, they realized it was very calm compared to the Atlantic. So, this woman screaming and flailing about because this monkey is yanking on her hair and waving the razor in her face. Her screaming apparently angers the monkey and turns it from being calm to being wrath.